into emergency mode. That's when the inner voice speeds up. It starts talking non-stop, creating possible responses, testing reactions, calculating consequences, all in seconds. As if there were a mental control room working at maximum speed to prevent you from saying the wrong thing, because the world out there doesn't wait. It pressures you. It demands a stance. And you, still processing internally, need to give an answer that seems confident. So your mind speaks to you first, so that you don't speak the wrong way to others. It's a silent protection, a mechanism for social survival. And when the answer finally comes out of your mouth, it has already gone through several versions inside your head, each one discarded, adjusted, or approved by the voice that no one else can hear. The silent habit of narrating one's own life gives a sense of control. There's a voice that never stops. It describes what you're doing as you do it. It comments on your actions as if it were an external narrator following your every move. Now I'm going to do this. I need to remember that. That didn't work. It's not Thotit's narration. As if the mind needs to transform your life into a story for it to make sense, so that every action has a visible purpose, even if it's only for yourself. And there's something comforting about that, because when you narrate your own life, you're in control of the story. You can edit, interpret, give meaning to what happens. Even if the world outside is chaotic, inside your head, there's a narrative order that you yourself created. It's an illusion, perhaps, but it's a necessary illusion. Because while the voice continues narrating, you feel like you're guiding your life, not just reacting to it. And that, in the end, is all the mind needs to keep going. The feeling that there's still someone holding the reins. In the end, all of this happens in silence. No one says, no one hears. But it's there, happening all the time. This internal conversation that organizes, comes, questions, and tries to make sense of what you feel. Thinking aloud isn't a sign of confusion. It's a sign that you're processing, trying to understand, seeking clarity in a world that rarely offers ready-made answers. And if you do this, you're not alone. Everyone has an inner voice. Some listen to it louder than others. Some ignore it. But it's there, working behind the scenes, transforming chaos into language, emotion into thought, doubt into possibility. And perhaps most importantly, realize that this is normal, human, necessary. You don't need to silence that voice. Just learn to listen to it without judgment, because it's not trying to drive you crazy. It's trying to help you exist. If this video resonated with you in any way, consider subscribing. Here, we observe what the mind does when no one is watching, and sometimes just recognizing it is. Have you ever noticed how some words form in your head even before you decide to say them? As if there's a silent rehearsal happening while you're still alone? There's something strange about that. The mind creates complete sentences, entire arguments, conversations that will never happen, all within a space where no one is listening. And yet, you keep talking. It's as if the inner voice needs to exist to bring order to what is not yet formed. As if thinking aloud were the only way to understand what is happening inside. If any part of this feels familiar to you, you're not alone. And if you ever feel like sharing your experience, the comments are open, because there are things the mind does on its own, in silence, that reveal far more than any real conversation. And one of them is this: transforming thought into sound, even when no one is around. The mind rehearses phrases silently, as if someone were listening. There's a strange moment that happens before you speak to someone. The sentence is already formed in your head. You mentally repeat it, adjust the tone, change a word, as if there were an invisible audience waiting for the right version. But there is no one. You are alone, and yet the mind continues rehearsing, testing responses, creating dialogues that may never be spoken aloud, but that need to exist before they become real. It's as if the head knows that words have weight, that they can hurt, clarify, or simply vanish into thin air. So it rehearses repeatedly until the sentence feels confident enough to come out. And the curious thing is that this happens even when you're not going to talk to anyone. The mind creates imaginary people who will listen, judge, respond, all within a silent theater where you are the only actor and the only audience. Thinking aloud becomes a way to organize internal chaos. There's a type of confusion that doesn't have a name. It's not anxiety, it's not fear, it's just a feeling that everything inside your head is too scattered. Loose thoughts, directionless emotions, decisions that don't come together. And then you start talking to yourself. Not to anyone, just to yourself. And somehow, the words begin to organize what was previously just noise, as if the voice were a tool for internal tidying. The mind needs to listen to itself to understand what it is feeling, because some thoughts only make sense when they gain sound, when they leave the abstract realm and become something that can be touched, even if only by hearing. It's strange, but it works. The voice transforms chaos into sequence. What was undefined becomes linear, and you realize you weren't confused, you were just trying to think too fast, without giving things time to organize themselves. The mind creates imaginary dialogues to feel less alone. There are times when loneliness isn't physical. You can be surrounded by people and still feel like no one is really there. Then the mind is something curious. It invents company. It's not madness. It's emotional survival. Your mind creates entire conversations with people who aren't present. Friends, family, even imaginary versions of strangers. And you respond. You are. You love, all in silence. These internal dialogues fill a void that the outside world can't reach. Because sometimes you don't need a real answer, you just need the feeling that someone is listening, even if that someone is yourself. And the strangest thing is that these dialogues seem real. You feel the other person's presence. You imagine their voice, their reactions, what they would say, as if the mind had learned to create a connection where none exists, just to avoid feeling completely alone. Talking to yourself helps to test decisions without consequences. Every decision carries an invisible weight, even the small ones. Because choosing one thing means abandoning another, and the mind knows this. So it creates a safe space to test possibilities. You talk to yourself. You argue both sides. You defend one choice, then attack it, as if there were an internal court where all versions of yourself could debate without anything bad happening on the outside. It's a kind of emotional simulation, a rehearsal for reality, because in your head, you can be wrong as many times as you want. You can change your mind without having to justify it. You can feel the weight of each option before turning it into action. And sometimes the decision doesn't even have to be big. It could be about a conversation, a request, an answer, but the mind treats everything as if it were important. Because for it, every word spoken is a risk, and talking to oneself is the only way to test that risk before accepting the consequences. Verbal thought comes emotions that don't know how to become feelings. There are emotions that have no name. They get stuck somewhere between the chest and the throat, unable to be transformed into something comprehensible. And the mind, trying to process them, begins to speak, not to explain, just to give voice to what is trapped, because some emotions only calm down when they gain words. When they cease to be just physical sensations and become something that can be named, even if only internally. It's as if the inner voice were a bridge. It takes what's confusing and translates it into language, and in the process, the emotion loses some of its intensity. It doesn't disappear, but it becomes less suffocating, less urgent. You realize this when you're alone and start murmuring disjointed phrases. I don't know what to do. This doesn't make sense. Why do I feel this way? These aren't questions expecting answers. They're attempts to transform the invisible into something the mind can grasp. The mind uses words to shape what is still confused. There's a moment before clarity, a state where you know something is there, but you can't see what it is, like a shadow moving on the periphery of consciousness, never revealing its full form. And then you start to speak, not with certainty, trying to incomplete sentences, words that come and go, thoughts that correct themselves midway, as if the voice were a lantern slowly illuminating what was in the dark. Because confusion isn't a lack of information, it's an excess of information without structure. And the mind needs language to create that structure. It needs to transform vague sensations into solid concepts, even if provisional. It's a slow, almost artisanal process. Each word is a piece that fits into another, until the puzzle begins to make sense. And you realize you weren't lost too. We're just searching for the right language to describe what you already knew, but couldn't yet emit. Self-dialogue reveals concerns that find no space outside. There are things you don't say out loud, not because they're secrets, but because the outside world doesn't have the patience to hear them. There are worries too small to be taken seriously, or too big to be shared without seeming exaggerated. So they stay inside, and the mind alone begins to talk to itself about them. It repeats scenarios. It analyzes possibilities. It creates explanations that no one else will hear, but that need to exist in some way. It's as if self-dialogue is the last refuge for unspoken things, the place where you can be completely honest without fear of judgment, without needing to edit, justify, or make palatable what you're really feeling. And the curious thing is that these worries don't disappear just because they're kept inside. They remain there, circulating, demanding attention. And talking to oneself is the only way to give them the space that the outside world never offered. Thinking aloud is an attempt to understand oneself better. You don't know yourself as well as you think. There are parts of you that only appear when no one is looking. Thoughts that arise out of nowhere. Reactions you didn't expect to have. Feelings that contradict everything you thought you knew about yourself. And it is in these moments that the inner voice emerges, not to judge, but to investigate. Why did I react like that? What does this mean? Do I really think this? As if you were a mystery that needs to be deciphered, little by little. Talking to yourself becomes a form of self-interest. You ask yourself questions and try to answer them honestly, because only there, in the privacy of verbal thought, can you admit things you would never say to another person, not even to yourself in silence. It's a slow and steady process of discovery. With each internal dialogue, you learn a little more about who you really are. Not the version you show to the world, but the one that exists when all the masks fall and only the voice speaking alone in the dark remains. The inner voice emerges when the outside world demands quick answers. There are times when everything happens too fast. An unexpected question, a situation that demands an immediate decision, a look that expects something from you, and the mind goes.